Oh no, I'm invisible.
You don't have to do that. You can just stand over there.
Or here, look.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Hi, I'm Emmy.
And I'm James.
And welcome back to the Bestiary Monster Manual A through Z. And James, what are we talking about today?
Nasty, horrid, skulking creatures in the shadows. It's the goblin.
Yep. It's the goblin.
Gobbos.
Yes, it's everybody's first monster.
Usually. Yeah, they're a classic.
Yeah.
And despite being a classic, they can be incredibly flexible. They can, be like many things in D&D, they can be whatever you want them to be. But in the sort of typical settings, as written, they're cruel, black-hearted, cowardly, weak little things that have this cruel cunning to them despite all that.
Yes, they are interesting in that you can kind of make them exactly whatever you want to be. Like you were saying, they have so many different bases in different mythology and things like that. As they are discussed in the book, they are generally unpleasant. They are part of a larger family of creatures called the Goblinoids.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about a few of them, or we'll be talking about a few more. And they're generally speaking driven to war because of ambition or greed, but largely in the case of goblins, fear. They fear their bigger goblin cousins, and they fear their god, who is... I'm gonna have to look at this in the book because it is one of those words that you look at it and you're like, Maglubiet. Maglubiet. It's
very much in kind of like in the front of the mouth. Maglubiet.
And Maglubiet is a god that they worship not because they think he's awesome, but because they worry that one day he's going to come back from Acheron and destroy them all. So
yeah. As depicted, Maglubiet is a 9 or 11 foot tall. 11 foot tall goblin with sort of blackened skin and fiery eyes, who wills them to kill and destroy and steal and whatever in his name, not because he likes them, but because he can, and he's just a horrible bully.
Bully is a very important word with goblins. They are largely bullied into doing things by bigger goblins. They are, generally speaking, ruled by the strongest or the smartest, which is something that we were discussing a little bit that you don't always see a lot of and can be a lot of fun, is that goblins are a people and they run the entire gamut of a people's existence, and it's something we don't see lots and lots and lots of, is that smart goblin leaders are smart.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Like, an individual goblin is almost always going to be terrible in most respects, usually. Which is why typically they're presented en masse. Their solution to overcoming a problem very often is just numbers, overwhelming force. And it's very tempting to sort of think of their leaders in that same way. But I find it personally more interesting to lean more into that kind of cunning and trickery side of things that goblins also have. For example, their lairs, their sort of their homes effectively are almost always riddled with traps and pits and nasty things and just little alcoves that anything bigger than a goblin can't get through, but goblins can scurry through and lay the next ambush and the next trap. And when they're played to their strengths, which is this kind of sneaky, smitey, nasty side, they can actually be quite intimidating.
I know I've seen more than one party go down to a goblin. I know I've played a game, actually, a game that you ran, where goblins dang near decimated us in Battle 1. Mm-hmm. We almost lost someone. We barely won. It was a really horrible fight, and I think it was 4 goblins? 4. So
against a party of 5, admittedly level 1, but still 5
Still.
player characters.
Yeah, and it's not like they were poorly rolled characters or
Nope.
anything. It wasn't like any of us were new to the game.
Nope.
It was just that goblins can kind of overwhelm. They've got, as a general rule, quarter challenge rating for most general goblins. There is a goblin boss who is a challenge rating 1,
Mhm.
but they run in numbers. They also have a tendency to keep rats and wolves. And wolves, another one of those things that in the book, they have pack tactics and things like that. They work well in groups. So they have a tendency to just pack up and just suddenly be very, very, very intimidating. And then sometimes you'll combine them with hobgoblins. And it starts to get to be a lot really, 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 really quickly. They are things that you will see, as we've been saying, with other creatures. Other goblinoids have a tendency to have them hanging around. Sometimes ogres, sometimes orcs will have them hanging around as just helpful things to do stuff.
I mean, in many cases, as slave labor,
Yeah.
basically.
To a degree. And again, if that's something that you don't necessarily want to have in your campaign and you want to stay away from that, always feel free to cut it. But generally speaking, they can have them around as just kind of camp fodder. Again,
Peons, I
Yeah.
believe is the term.
They're whatever you want them to be in many, many ways, though. If you want to expand on this, there's certainly nothing that says no, because the description of them is again pretty basic. Goblins are everywhere, and if you want to play with this, it's very, very, very easy to do. I mean, they're even a playable race now.
Yeah, they are. You can make goblin player characters. There's actually a really fun one shot out there that I've run for people in the past called We Be Goblins, based around You Are All Goblins.
So much.
It's really fun. This is not a sponsored mention, but I like to support good creative work when I find it. So yeah, if you're interested in a fun little goblin one shot, check out We Be Goblins.
I know I've played a wizard goblin, which was really fun and fascinating. They have a wide variety of experiences, so if you want to mess with that, you certainly can. Right down to the appearance.
I mean, yeah, like speaking of a wide variety of experiences and appearances, looking at the art, that's very obviously a goblin. There are always going to be features, well, I say always, almost always features that different depictions of goblins are going to have in common. You've got those kind of nasty, pointy teeth. You've got the very basic, spiky looking patchwork armor, the pointy ears, the kind of ferocious but also kind of not particularly intimidating expression, pointy claw-like nails on the toes and fingers, just a squat, mean-looking appearance.
And this is again one goblin. Even in D&D depictions, you can see a lot of different depictions. I've seen them green, I've seen them yellow, I've seen them brown. You have as many options for goblin appearances as you have ideas. I think the ears are one of those things that I think of first, but even then, just long and pointed. This guy's looks like they're kind of raggedy and stuff like that. Maybe he had them torn up a little bit, who's to say? But that's primarily what I think of as the ears, but you could have all kinds of fun with just a ragtag group of goblins with different shaped ears and different colored skins. And again, there's a few things that are fairly classic, but they're really fun to play with.
Mhm.
And that's, again, I think another thing that just draws them as the first thing you fight. They're incredibly populous. They're everywhere. And they're fun. They're goblins. They're just delightful. They're fun to role play. They're fun to fight against. They're just fun.
Yeah, I mean, we've both talked about how, like, there's that little bit of a soft spot for creatures that are on their own just a bit rubbish.
Yeah.
And Goblin on his own, sort of, he's kind of, leap up at you and try and stab you with his little knifey and probably completely fail. And right before you run your blade through its face, there's just that little moment of,
Aw. You
tried.
He did. I know we've talked a bit about games that James and I have both run. James ran Fandelver's Pact, Last Mans of Fandelver, for me and a group of friends. And there's the goblin character Droop.
Yep.
We kind of adopted him, and there's apparently a note even in the book about they might try to adopt him. This is why they're kind of cute.
I mean, we theorized that in the play testing for Lost Mines of Phandelver, there must have been enough groups that decided to adopt him because he is so adorably useless.
Yeah, you feel kind of bad for the guy. You don't want to let him go. Where's he gonna go?
That it actually became like a proper instruction in the adventure that like they may try and do this. Be aware.
Be aware that this might happen no matter what you do. And it kind of happened, and it wasn't like we're a cuddly group of adventurers. So it's just one of those things. They're kind of cute.
And he contributed nothing.
Absolutely nothing. It was useless. But that's again the kind of thing about, at the very least, goblins as enemies. You can make them again more dynamic and maybe more useful and a little bit more terrifying. But these early levels, a lot of them are just kind of mid-range useless, and that can be fun too.
Thank you so much for joining us again here at the Bestiary Monster Manual A to Z. Have you had any particularly fun or exciting encounters with these mean little morons? Let us know down in the comments if you have. And while you're down there, you can like the video, you can subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You'll also find our various presences on social media there. And yeah, check out some of our more previous videos here, and do join us next time when we examine the golems.